Hey Will, I'll make this as quick as I can. We're going to be going over some styling stuff, so let's just go ahead and take a look. We're also going to be, before we move forward, we're also going to be taking a look at, a little bit of blog stuff, just kind of an introduction to blog stuff, and just kind of an introduction to mobile design as well. So let's take a look at this. So there is so much elbow grease that's put into this. The level of detail is incredibly deep. There is layer after layer of consideration. For instance, I don't want to drone on and on about this because I could get into the details deeper and deeper and deeper. I was going to pull this up and show you, but I'm just not going to, I'm not going to go there too deeply. So subbing these images in here, our natural logo had a lot of white pixels around here, and it couldn't show up with anything but white underneath it, so it was very much so unusable. So basically, it's hard for me to even put this in a nutshell. See, I can see all the way down, there's a single white pixel there, and there's a few pink pixels up top of that. If you can see my mouse cursor, I can see down to the iota is the point. And there's been work done down to the iota. So the first step was to edit some things here with the image, adjusting brightness and contrast and saturation, a lot of different factors just on that one level of depth, just to get it to be able to show on top of whatever I put here, because I wanted the border up top to be really thin. I wanted it to be really thin. And you can see here it looks immaculate. There's so many levels of detail here, so many considerations. I'll try to go over them in a quick manner, but just to kind of show you how many levels of depth of consideration there is. You've got, like I said, adjusting the contrast, the brightness, the saturation, everything, just to get this logo to show. That's without making any actual adjustments to the logo file itself. So maybe I've got it pulled up here. You can see there's different files here. You can see that there's the original one here. So let me unhighlight that. You can see how the roof is what was edited. So these roofs were unusable. Actually, this is the one that was used. So basically, this one had too many white pixels around it. You see how there's like a highlight of white around it? That showed up everywhere. So the only way it was usable is if there was white underneath the logo, underneath the transparent logo, because then you couldn't see the white and pink borders. Well, what that entailed first, I had this pulled up so I was going to show you, but I'm not going to go through all the different things and show you all the different things I've done, just because, for the sake of time. But first thing I tried was going around and actually manually, and see, we're on 800% of magnification now, going through and manually changing each like white and ivory pixel over to a sort of pink. Well, that didn't really work. So what I did instead was I used what's called a Gaussian blur. I basically used the fuzzy select tool to select everything that had to do with the roof automatically. And then I used a Gaussian blur, which it's hard to describe. It's just because I have so much experience working with logos and placement on websites. I mean, an immense amount of experience. So I know how to work with these logos. Using a Gaussian blur kind of, it's really hard to explain. It blurs the image out and kind of blends the red and things over top of the white. It basically just it's hard to explain it. Pixelates it and spreads the color. So basically, the Gaussian blur just like spreads the color out within these confines here that you see the highlight. And then the on our logo, the brown is a little too brown. It's understood as a red. We communicate it as a red. We talk about it being a red as our color. So after the Gaussian blur, there was a lot of different, like again, saturation, hue changes, colorizing, a lot of different things like contrast, brightness, a lot of different things were changed to get this really, really rich, sort of red, brown, cyan color. So you take a look here, you can kind of see you've got that highlight, like a white pink highlight around the what's really a brown. You can see that it's a brown, sort of it's hard to tell because it's got the black underneath it. It's a transparent image. Well, not necessarily with the red, but with the black surrounding it, it's hard to tell exactly that it's just sort of a lackluster brown is really the best way to explain it. So after doing, we did the Gaussian blur, which helped with the edges of the roof had a lot of white and pink and stuff around it. Pixels. I'm talking about iotas. I'm explaining the levels of depth here in lots of different areas. That way I don't have to show every level of depth and everything I've done between fonts and all this different stuff. I can just show you how deep it gets here, and then you'll understand that there's so many iotas, if you will. So basically we made the image usable, because what would happen is when you would sit the old image, the old roof on top of here, it would have white around it, so it would look like an unprofessional image. And then so we did the Gaussian blur, and then here we did color correction, which made it too red. And then now you can see that this one is much more red. It's like a hot red, and this is, it's brought back. And I could make changes to bring it back even further, but it's just to show you the level of complexity. And this is all just the roof of this logo. So I can get it in this position and not have to put a white background underneath it, because then it would be white and white, which really, all the white space on the website is no longer white. It's actually sort of a ivory white mixture. So let me just kind of go over this as it is, and then I'll explain a couple more details, and I'll just show you the blog reel at the bottom, which you're going to see, and then I'll show you the mobile. That way there's not too much time taken up. Okay, so you take a look here. This is how it starts out. The top is sticky. The nav bar is sticky. We've got the logo right here. Not intrusive, but beautiful right there, sitting right on top. I love it. That transparent looks wonderful. And I might bring that red back a little bit more, but honestly it just looks great. All the images on the website have actually been changed to a spring theme, so everything is spring, dandelions, just different spring stuff, and have used mostly the same, not the same dog, but pretty much the same dog. So there's a lot of consistency throughout the styling and design now. I mean, a lot, in a lot of different areas that I won't cover. There's just so much depth to the detail. So I don't know. I know that these images are of Rottweilers. I know that there was some kind of, the images look beautiful. That's just what it is. You're going to be more the expert of, I think all the drama recently was around the pit bull, but I don't, you're the expert there, so just let me know. I don't think this is going to impact anything whatsoever. These images look wonderful. But there are tons of spring images with lots of different dogs out there. There's tons of Labrador dogs and Golden Retriever spring images, all kinds of good stuff. So none of this is set in stone. It's getting a tighter grip on these details. So all the images are consistent. Everything is consistent throughout, and that requires a lot of elbow grease. Each individual thing, each element is dealt with individually to make sure that it's consistent throughout. So you've got an animation up here called a float animation. So when you pop up there, it's a float, and that's what it does. You can see that the font combinations we're using is Lobster and Cabin, and this is a tried and true combination, and it looks absolutely lovely. Here I believe we're using, this is to kind of point out the elbow grease that goes into these details. This is actually a Lobster number 2, which is a horizontal version. You can see here that there's a tilt, sort of an italic. But what we did here is we used Lobster number 2, which is more vertical, and reduce the weight, which is sort of like the boldness a little bit, and then we put the italics back on it, and then altered the letter spacing. So all of this is done for each and every element. Each and everything. You can see the letter spacing here is spaced out. And I'm gonna go through again when I go and look over all the copywriting and finalize the details. I think I still have to change some of these, like change the weight down by 200 points here, which is going to make it look a little bit thinner, but not so much. We'll take a look at some of those. You can see that the animation here is consistent. The color schemes are all consistent, so you're going to see this anywhere where those the accent green is used. You're going to see the same exact green. It's not going to be different colors of green. Between different pieces of text, you're going to see the same exact color. You're not going to see an off-white here and then a full white. You will, depending on what the background and stuff is, but places where it's absolutely imperative for consistency to be there, it's there. So we're basically crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, and there's, not to be cliche or anything, but there's going to be more T's and I's, but we're getting that tighter grip. Think of it as grip. You can see here, the white was driving me nuts, so you can see kind of a difference here. The white just wasn't doing it for me, so I used sort of an off-white, and just to show kind of like the complexity that goes into these details. You take a look here, these look like the same color, but they're not. The nav bar is slightly darker, and that's because this color here, which I love, this sort of ivory, sort of silver ivory, looks wonderful for the larger white spaces on the site, but it's a very complex color to get. It's actually an ivory with sort of a, so whereas this is what you might call ivory, so let's take a look at it. Let's get into the color. See, this is the code, this is the programming for the color, and if you go white, you can see this bubble moves up and beyond, and it's all F's. That's the hex code for pure white. Now if we come down here and we go as far as we can, as close as we can to white, it's EF, EF, EF. And so that is, as far as the hex code goes, the programming goes, ivory. And so this is a pure ivory. But if we take a look at this color, which is even better, and it's fine that the nav bar is slightly darker here, because as you can see, there's look, here's another level of detail. You see this black border underneath the nav bar that separates it from the site. So does it being slightly darker, which it ends up working in our benefit. And there's actually a box shadow as well. You can see here there's the border line of black, the black line, and then you can see the black shadow extends out. So there is an immense amount of detail with every single little thing. Now, the reason we couldn't get the same exact color, I mean, I just every single thing has to be circumvented. There's a workaround for everything to make consistency throughout. Is because to get this beautiful ivory silver color here, essentially had to take a look at the color. You can see here, you see the color is rather transparent. It's that ivory, the EF, the closest we can get to white, just off white, the pure ivory. There's a lot of edits made to just that color, just to get the perfect mixture. Think of it like mixing different colors of paint, only much more complex, down to individual numbers. You see all this? So this is essentially off-white plus all of these degrees, and you can see there's this level of transparency. We can't use this transparency on this nav bar because when you scroll over things, you would be able to see things underneath. So, but it still works out in our favor for this to be ivory for this to be sort of a transparent silver ivory mixture. And I'm not going to be saving anything, just kind of showing you some details and stuff. So as we move on, you can see that everything's consistent. You've got float animations here, float, and this color's consistent throughout. It follows sort of this elegancy. There's a lot of different animations. You know, I started with a pop and a push. You know, that basically it started out with a grow. Basically wanted something elegant and something, you know, consistent, that was consistently elegant throughout. So those are the animations I used. And the text within the buttons is also cabin. You know, cabin, cabin, cabin. These are all very different, complex elements that are made consistent throughout. This green is the same as this green. It's the same as this green. And you know, sizes and spacing is changed as well. You can see here that there's actually an extra column. There's sizing changes so that there's a bit of space between these two main elements. The text here, there's all kinds of editing that goes in to make it that shape and size and spacing and color, to make it 4 lines as opposed to 5 lines. You know, what looks best for that little area, and you get something that looks nice. And all the images are made consistent. You know, it's got that spring feel to it, and you have to have the overlay consistent. There you can see how there's like this black shadow over the image but underneath the elements. That makes it so the elements pop and the image sort of, even though it's great, it falls to the background without it interfering with the elements. That way the elements are the main part. That's what you're engaging with. You're not engaging with the image. The image is there. It's a background image. Still got this guy up here. Pickup and delivery, state of the art transport for peace of mind. And everything is This is lobster, cabin, everything's made consistent. And you know, these start out at weight 600, which makes the letters push into each other more. And I reduce that weight down to 400 so that, you know, it looks better. Each of the letters are thinner, but they are still bold and look like a phenomenal title without being too much and without, you know, pushing into one another too much. See that these titles have one capital letter and the rest are lowercase, whereas these are all, you know, all of them are uppercase. There's just such a complexity and depth in these details. And it's only going to get better, you know. Like I said, it's to be thought of as a grip, getting a grasp on how exactly we want to present ourselves. I love these. We can make flyers all day for any kind of, you know, any promotion that Mel comes up with. We can make a flyer for it and put it on there. I mean, these look wonderful. I've never seen this anywhere on any website. I wish I could remember. I did so much research on, I probably went over 30 or 40 different competitors. There's probably about 20 or 30. Might have been 35, I think. I can't remember which competitor it was that had the really just cheap looking coupon cutout. And it was like, I mean, yeah, the cutout, the dotted line is consistent with the coupon idea, but I mean, you're not going to cut it out of the computer. So these flyers look really good. And we'll get some realistic images to put here. We'll take some images. We'll get an image of an employee, a couple images of, you know, just whoever. It doesn't even really matter. You know, that's not something difficult. And we're just going to write in our own. Doesn't matter. See, this is main title, subtitle. You know, we could have used any type of text here. We could have used cabin, but it's a subtitle, so we're going with lobster, and there's some extra spacing there, letter spacing, to just make it look just right. It's kind of like when you go fine dining. And like I said, it's only going to get better. But fine dining, they're bringing out this white plate, and they might use a little garnish on the outside. They might not. They might use a little bit of garnish on top of they might do some drizzle. They might do, but every single detail is taken into consideration. That's what makes it art. As you can see here, consistent color, consistent animation. We've got the elegant float. Just smooth. Our menu hovers right over this beautiful image, and I mean, it looks great. Think about if you go to petpalace.com. I mean, it's not, I would say that theirs is wildly fun. Well, I remember the very first, and remember, these are the guys that are #1 on Google and a lot of different search on a lot of the primary keywords. Petpalace.com. But you go there, and I remember going over it with you one time and just saying how cheesy the color scheme is, the pink or the yellow, purple, sort of. I think they use sort of an ivory. You could tell how much research I've done, but I remember my very first impression. I still remember it because I explained it to you. There was so much text on screen in so many. I mean, there was just so much text. What's called above the fold. So like, this bottom part here is the fold, and I know this is pushing time, but it's just there's so much detail and stuff. I want to make sure that we really grasp what's going on while we're moving forward. So I apologize. I mean, I got to get to the store anyways, but I really want to make sure we take our time here. You know, you've got these videos embedded. It looks wonderful. You know what I mean? Everything is videos right under here. You don't have images that don't fit the screen or are stretched out too much, or you know everything is lined up and fits and looks and is smooth and is, you know, simple and graceful, so that we can make changes as we move forward and get more complex while, you know, maintaining an elegance, a simple elegance. There's a lot of thought that goes into these details. And like I was saying about theirs, you know, look how smooth. I mean, we're talking about money, right? So, number one, everyone wants everything to be free. And number two, as far as websites go, you know, you don't want to have it's already a headache to spend money. It's a headache to do these logistics. You know, someone might be going out of town for a funeral. They don't want to come to a website that's got a bunch of cheesy colors and all the text is pushed together, and they can't even, I mean, they're stressed out about the trip anyways. You know, it might have even been a loss in the family or something, or a business trip that they got to do a presentation for, and they don't like speaking in front of people. You know, whatever it is, we basically suck all of the negative energy out of it. You know, I don't like to talk like that, energy or whatever, but we suck all of the worry and all of the, you know what I mean? It's not, you don't have this feeling of claustrophobia when you look over it. It's a simple, elegant, beautiful menu that you can see right there. Rates may change depending on season. Book now for complete total. I mean, we're not trying any cheesy tricks. We don't have any cheesy colors. We're not using, you know, we're not trying to bombard people with text and messages and stuff like that. We're not sticking our menu right up top so that, you know, we're not forcing it down their throats to dive into the particulars. You know, it's really, really, really well thought out, if I may say so. The size of the text in each element area is you know, thought to. How much spacing there is between each letter. Where these images are placed, these three here, you know, where they're placed and where the text is placed. And see, this is the weight 400 with the lobster. I like that the best, so I'm going to make sure that all of these are weight 400. This might get something, you know, totally separate for itself. This might be already on 400. It might be 600, which is default. I think this is still in 600. That looks really good though. So does this. So I'll check it out with the weight 400 and see which, you know, the weight 400 is going to make it look thinner than the 600 does. So it's kind of like a bold type of thing. We're reducing the bold on it. I think that this looks lovely, but I also think that experience up top looks lovely. You can see that, you know, the bottom of the video lines up flawlessly with the text here. And you know, you do get a lot of consistency when you use a template or a, you know, some kind of theme, but you just don't have the level of control that you do when you do it from scratch. So this is all from scratch. You can't really target your business objectives when you go with a theme. And that's what I found in my experience, and I have a ton of experience. You can't really set up each segment to really, you kind of have to deal with what the theme tells you. You know, you can put this here, you can put this here. You really can't change anything about a theme. Might have to reduce some of the space here. The only problem with reducing space between certain elements, basically I would have to take these elements and put it into this area, because there can be a lapse of moving this section up over the top of this section will add these two colors together. Remember, because they're transparent, so they'll overlay each other, making the overlay darker, which would put like a dark bar between these two segments. There's a little too much space there, but you can see how much, how much consideration goes into this stuff, And of course there's making a change and then, not quite what I thought it was going to be, let's change it back and then make a different change. So it's constant, it's like hacking. Procedural trial and error is what it is, And then, of course, you can go a whole day making changes, and then there can be a break in the system. Just, how computers are. There can be a break in the system, and you lose an entire day's work. And you have to start again, which everything you did, so it's easier to come back that way, but that can happen. Consistency throughout. There's less letter spacing here, just to get it down to 3 lines, and it just feels right. These are probably going to change. You can see these are just sort of like filler, but we are going to be writing blogs on this stuff: dog training, pet salons, animal boarding. What to look for in a pet salon, what to look for in animal boarding. And then, of course, we can rank those articles so that when people are looking around, you know what I mean? We only have so much text on the home page, and a lot of the text is dedicated to certain areas. For instance, we don't have a whole lot of text in this area that is specifically targeted towards ranking for the keyword animal boarding Indianapolis. You know what I mean? There's a lot about animal boarding here, but Google doesn't release their algorithms. So we don't know if any of this stuff is, dog resort is definitely going to go, cat resort is definitely going to go and help us with ranking for animal boarding Indianapolis, but you get a lot more freedom if you write an article about it, and then you can write that article, you make that entire web page. For this blog post, you make that entire web page geared up specifically for animal boarding Indianapolis. All of the text, all of the meta text, the tags, image tags in the code, everything is geared towards ranking for that one keyword and maybe a couple other ones. But that's the purpose of the blog. I might change, there's some other ways I could go with this, but it's simple. It looks good. It looks simple and elegant. I might try a couple different things though. Like I said, it's a grasp. But there's an introduction to this is just a blog roll, and each blog post will get its own individual page. Excuse me. And some of these got to go in and edit these and make sure they're consistent as well. You can see here the footer. We might end up making a larger footer with all the different links and stuff like that, or we may not. I'm gonna have to double check and see if there might be a reason for ranking if we do that, but I think that this looks nice and simple. It's consistent text. It's not some different text. It's lobster. You see, everything is consistent. Everything's thought of. Okay, just going to take a quick look at, this isn't finished by any means whatsoever, but just going to show you kind of what you see. I can take a look from tablet point of view. I can take a look at mobile point of view. This is nowhere near, it's basically just kind of getting things in place. It's not I'm just introducing you to what the programming and editing and everything looks like. So I've got my own mobile copy, and I go in and make edits and changes, and things on the mobile side of the website can be all the details, the spacing, the leveling. It's actually much harder to do it on the mobile side of things, because things just respond in weird ways, and there's a ton of circumventing. So basically getting everything in place. It's like building a second website, and all those details come along with it. Maybe not so much like the fonts and the colors. Those are good and set in place, but the spacing and the circumventing, those details, that's what it all comes down to. And then, of course, I pull this up on my phone and make sure that everything looks smooth as you go. You see what I'm saying? You've got images that need to be different sizes than they are on the actual website. So it's very much so like building a second website. Okay, all right, that's it for this one. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.